Right, let's get started, everybody. So welcome to this session about courageous leadership. Thank you very much for selecting to be part of what could be one of the most interesting sessions, I think, today. My name's Ruth Owen. If you don't know me, I'm the Director General for Personal Tax in HMRC, and I'm the Head of Profession for the Operational Delivery Profession. Firstly, I should say thank you to Steve and Esri, who are sponsoring this session today. You'll hear a bit more about them later. And you also hear most of the session today from Nick Holbrook from Mind Gym, which makes it start to sound exciting already, doesn't it, that we're going to be doing something a bit different, I think, today. So I hope you'll enjoy it. But the focus of today, you've already heard how we're trying to drive innovation through the civil service and to energise and to inspire our people to do things differently. And how are we going to do that as leaders? As you well are aware, it's now more important than ever before that we get change right in our organisations, and it's our responsibility as leaders in the civil service to be able to lead our people through some quite bumpy times, if we're honest, in terms of the number of things that are going on at the moment, and to inspire them to see the opportunities within the transformations that we're delivering. Within the context that we're setting ourselves, not only are there the changes within the civil service itself, the reform of the civil service that we're seeking to achieve, the professionalisation agenda, which is a really strong positive for how we want to lead our people. You'll have heard all about the news last week about how the context also is delivering more for less. And I'm sure all of you in your departments will be working through what change do you need to deliver to meet the Chancellor's request of us last week to be delivering more, quicker, but at lower cost. And I don't think there's a single department in the civil service that isn't going through not only its traditional policy change, but organisational transformation to try to find new ways to deliver for our citizens, for our customers, in new and innovative ways. And we want our people to be inspired and to be motivated by that. However, what the People Survey tells us generally is our people don't think we manage change very well. So we've got a real disconnect in a time when change is more important than ever before, with our people saying, but this isn't something that we're particularly good at. And as our leaders, they're looking to us to try to engage them in that change agenda. I hope you'll also have seen the Civil Service Capabilities Plan that highlights project programme management and change management as one of the priorities of the capabilities that we really need to be building as part of civil service reform. Well, what I hope you might get out of this next session is not just to think about PPM in its fairly sort of standard and traditional ways, or even about change management, but actually about leadership. And really think about the leadership models that you bring to transforming your part of the civil service. Because what we're seeking to achieve is not only a major transformation of how the public services of this country are delivered, but doing so in a way that takes our people with us at the same time. So how can you lead some fairly tricky, difficult, transformational change while engaging your people, while providing that really inspirational vision that says we've got to get from here to there, but there is so much better, and there are so many opportunities along that path for our people to be part of the transformation. Many of you will know lots of innovative, motivated people within your own parts of the civil service, desperate to make a difference, but somehow the rules and the structures can often act against it. So it's about empowering and enabling them to make that difference if you lead them towards what that inspiring vision will be. It will also be about our communication so that people really understand what it is that we're trying to achieve, and even more importantly, why we're doing it. And my own experience of both experiencing change from on top and change from below and transformational changes, we get so hung up on the what has got to change that we forget to tell our people why we're going through the change. And if they don't understand why, they're never going to come with us, because the why has got to be the thing that they actually trust and believe and own themselves. As just one very small example to show that we haven't quite cracked it yet, an email I received just over this weekend about a particular change we're running in HMRC insisted that, according to the Gantt chart of the major project that we're working on, I had to sign off a communication last night for people to be notified both today and tomorrow about a major change. which clearly our people, our managers, our leaders had not been briefed on and would have been caught by surprise if I'd sounded that off yesterday night and we hadn't managed that change and that communication effectively. So thankfully, I got there in time and I was able to pull the communication and say, no, it doesn't matter what the Gantt chart says, we're going to do this professionally, we're going to talk our leaders through it, we're then going to talk their managers through it, and we're going to make sure when we tell people about this particular change that impacts on our customers and our colleagues' lives, they'll all know why we're doing it and they'll all have their say in managing that change. And that's one very, very small example in one department across all departments in the civil service. And I challenge anyone to say that kind of thing isn't happening in your department too. So today, I think you've got a good session to stretch those leadership muscles in your mind gym session, to really think about leadership in the real authentic sense of what is it that you're going to do and how can you do this differently. This is a taster session for more sessions that will be available for the senior civil service later in the autumn, and our grade 6s and 7 leadership community for a half-day session a bit later in the year. I hope you have fun, I hope you enjoy it, I hope you get something out of it, and I'd now like to welcome Nick Holbrook to set the session going. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ruth. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Is the mic switched on? I can hear it coming on as I walk across the stage. Wonderful. So thank you very much, Ruth. That's wonderful. That's some wonderful words of introduction there. I want you to get everyone as close to the front as possible because you're going to take part in some activities now. But a lot of people said to me, hang on a sec, Nick, if I'm very close to the front, my neck's going to be like that. So I don't want you to be uncomfortable. So I hope you're comfortable sitting where you are at the moment. I'm with a firm called the Mind Gym. I'm a coach. That's what I'm supposed to do. And we're a kind of a psychology, learning and development organisation. And I'm going to take you through a session for the next 7 hours. I'm only joking, it's only an hour, which I hope you find, I hope you find it lots of things. I hope you find it interesting, I hope you find it stimulating, I hope you find it connects with you in lots of ways about the content that we're going to talk about here. And above all, when my session finishes, and I'm going to make sure I finish on time before handing over to Steve, I would love nothing better than that I have built some connections in your heads around some of the topics we're going to talk about here this morning to get you thinking. As Ruth said, today is a taster session for some of the sessions we're going to be running in September and October. So I hope you enjoy the taste and that the first session is a very, very useful one for you. Can I just make sure everyone should have access to a silver envelope that we placed on the chairs there? If you haven't, you might want to reposition yourself. David and Jackie very kindly helped me hand out the silver envelopes. But there's some little handouts, some little goodies in here that we're going to invite you to work through individually and in pairs. So if you could find yourselves a seat where you're comfortable and your neck's not doing too much of that, and you've got a silver envelope, that would be wonderful. I've got a few spare ones here if anybody needs any. Please put your hand up if you haven't got one. It's quite important you have one for these sessions. Okay, lovely. Bunch of us here. Okay. Give me 10 seconds. I'm going to disappear and get you a few more. That's come and take a seat, and we'll just make sure you've got some of those. Excuse. Right, my lovely assistant David will hand those out. That's wonderful. So, welcome to the session, and I hope you enjoy the session very much. I am not going to be lecturing at you this morning, although I feel as though I am standing here at the minute. I'm going to get you to be working in pairs and groups around some of these things, so I hope you're okay with that. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do, if I may, inside your envelopes, you'll find a little card. We call it the temperature card. And we've been asked to invite you to take a minute or two to fill this in here this morning. So if you can find this little green chap here, it says on the front, hot, cold, lukewarm. And on the back, you'll find 3 questions. And can I just give you about 2 minutes, just personally, to pop your name on the top of the card and just to give a very honest answer to those 3 questions that are on the card there. The first one is, why did you join the civil service? The second is, how do you feel about leading change right now? And thirdly, on a scale of 1 to 10, how inspired are you by civil service reform? And if you want to put any additional information down there about why, please pop that down there. So just before we start the main content, if I could just ask you to take 2 minutes to fill that in, I'd be very grateful, and we'll collect those from you at the end of the session. This is designed to take the temperature, as you can understand, about about these important topics. Good question. I believe 10 is high and 1 is low. Yeah, very good question. Thank you. Yeah. Except in Germany, I think they do it the other way around, don't they? Culturally, you get very differences. That's right. So that's a good question. Thank you very much for doing that. I feel like I've taken you back to school for an exam. No one's allowed to speak. I'm the adjudicator. But just some honest, quick thoughts around some of those things. That would be wonderful, just to help the senior leadership take the temperature about how we feel about these things. Okay, and just for reasons of time, I'll give you another 30 seconds if I may. I'm sorry to rush you a little bit, and then we'll move on to the main content of what we're going to talk about here this morning. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for doing that. And if you could just put those safely, perhaps under your chair or somewhere safe, and we'll gather those from you at the end of the session. So, thank you very much indeed for doing that. Thank you for being here. I work for a company called the Mind Gym, and as I say, we're a kind of psychology learning and development organization. And one of the many pieces of information I have in my head is that the psychologists suggest that we should spend time on a fairly regular basis stepping back from what we do and looking at what we do and how we go about our business, if you like. And they suggest that we should at least do that twice a year. So once every 6 months, we should get some time to step back and look at what we do and look at things that we'd like to change or maybe modify in some way. So today's session is really about giving you a taster session to think about how you lead. It's the first time I've had the pleasure of meeting you, so I have no idea which of these individual topics are going to connect with all of you individually. But you're the expert on you, so you'll know exactly which topics are very, very important here, and I'll take you through what are called the 7 heads of leaders in just a few moments. And you'll know a lot more about the environments you're working in, the downsizing of the civil service. We've had lots of references already to more things being made digital. Several people have mentioned the turbulent times we're going through. So you're working through very, very challenging conditions at the moment, as you all know. And one of the things that is required of us is to be very, very courageous in terms of what we're doing. So if I could ask you just for about 90 seconds to turn to the lovely person next to you, or if you want a 3, that will be fine. I'm just going to ask you to just have a quick 90-second chat with the person next to you. Who do you consider to be courageous leaders? People you know or people in the media? They don't have to be people you've worked with. Just share with your partner, if you will, please, just for 90 seconds, some examples of people who come to mind as being courageous leaders, okay? 90 seconds, away you go, with your partner next to you. Any thoughts? Courageous leaders, who do we think them to be? Okay, 30 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, very good. Anybody care to give me some examples? People, courageous leaders, people you consider to be courageous leaders, and we may not know these people, maybe people that you know. Anybody give some examples they'd like to give?
The new guy at the Bank of England.
The new guy at the Bank of England. Okay, from Canada. Mark, Mark, I know, that's right, Mark. His name will come back to my mind. That's right, yes.
I had a guy you may or may not know, Terry Lee here.
Yes.
At Tesco's, and why I picked Terry was that he saw into the future.
Right.
He could see 10, 20 years into the future, and that's when he repositioned a lot of what Tesco's was doing at the time, from
Right.
selling things to moving into financial services.
Very good.
Met quite a lot of resistance.
Yes. And he worked his way up from a shelf stacker as a young kid. It's Mark Carney, isn't it? The name's just come out of my slow male brain. That's right. But absolutely right. Terry Lee, very good example. Bob Geldof, wonderful. In what sense? What aspect of his leadership catches your mind? Absolutely right. And we'll talk a bit about passion this morning. We'll also talk about something that I think he has a lot of authenticity as well. So a very good example here. Thank you. Any other examples? Very good example. Alex Hammond. Yes. Okay. Right. Aspects of that. What appeals to you about his leadership?
Well, what Ian and I were saying is he turned a party in Scotland that couldn't possibly be elected 20 years ago to be a majority government in a system that's possibly not designed for majority government.
Sure. Okay, very good. Okay, some excellent examples. Thank you very much indeed. Some of these other examples, which are kind of mainstream, I suppose, might have come to your mind. Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Barack Obama. You may well have people yourselves who you work with on a regular basis who, you can't mention here, or we wouldn't always know them, but they may be examples of courageous leaders in your mind as well. Did anyone cite themselves out of interest in turning to their partner as being courageous? There are lots of nods. No, I didn't do that, Nick. I wanted to, and I was able to, but I didn't. Not on this occasion. Okay. I suspect you're being very, very modest, but I suspect many of you were absolutely able to do that. Some other mainstream, or relatively mainstream names here, some of whom you may or may not know. Anyone know who this lady is on the top left-hand corner? Perhaps not as famous as some of the people in the first section. So this is a lady called Anne Mulcahy, who led Xerox through some very, very difficult times to some very, very good results indeed. I think I'm right in saying she was someone who always claimed she wasn't very good on strategy and strategy development, but I know people around me who are very good at it. And she would defer to the greater knowledge and experience of other people around her to great success at Xerox. Shami Chakrabarti from Liberty, someone who works and leads a pressure group, very, very keen to express views and thoughts after the events of 9/11. So you'll see her speak on television very often. Jonathan Ive, those of you who are big Apple fans, he designed, I think, just about everything Mac that we know. So a very, very courageous leader within the organization. And then Tim Berners-Lee, who is considered to be one of the founding fathers of the internet, and who did an amazingly brave and courageous thing and gave it away free so that the world could benefit. I think he's done rather well as a result afterwards. But, lots of ideas about leaders that come to mind. Any other examples of leaders that have just come to mind or you'd like to share with the group? All right, well, thank you for your examples, extremely good ones. Here are what are called the 7 heads of leadership. And I'm going to ask you, as we go through these topics here this morning, to think about how these things relate to you. So let's have a look at the first one, authenticity. How authentic am I with my team? Do they really know me well as a person? Do I know them well? Is that open and honesty in place? A really important quality. In lots of surveys that have been done in the last couple of years, in lots of different organizations, in different sectors, 2 of the qualities that we often feed back we most want from our leaders are authenticity and honesty. Seems to be a very, very strong requirement. We'll talk a little bit in the time that we've got here today about hope. We'll also talk about a very wonderful quality called humility. Consider what you're like at persistence. Are you brave at times? Do you show bravery in dealing with difficult situations or conversations that need to be had? I'll show you a very interesting example of a man who is oozing vitality. It will probably make your toes curl with embarrassment at the same time, but you might actually say, wow, that's very interesting. There's lots of things I could gain from that myself. So I'll show you an interesting video of a guy showing lots of vitality. And then I'll talk to you at the end about a quality that Albert Einstein was very, very well known for, many people as well. And although I wasn't in the room when the conversation happened, I believe someone is reputed to have said to him one day, Mr. Einstein, gosh, you're an incredibly clever guy, aren't you? You really must be very, very intelligent. To which he's reported to replied, actually, I'm not, but I'm just very, very curious. And he liked to find out why things happened in certain ways, or perhaps why something didn't happen. And he had this wonderful skill called curiosity. Yeah? So in your packs, you should have this little chap here called Are You Feeling Courageous? This is a little questionnaire for you to fill in. And if you could turn to the first page on the left-hand side, I'm going to give you about, I think we normally give you about 6 minutes, something like that, just to work your way through these questions, if you would individually, please. Take your time, there's no rush. And as always, the best answer to give is one that you feel very comfortable with, one that you're very honest about. Choose the statement that best applies to you. You know how these things work, I'm sure. So if you could work your way through those, and then towards the end, when you've done that, just see if you can work out your totals, and it will probably tease out, just in those questions, some areas of great strength for you. So some of you may well be very high on authenticity. Some of you may be very high on bravery or persistence. So I'll shut up and stop talking, but if you could take a few minutes just to work your way through that and reach your totals. And I'll give you about 6 minutes, and we'll pick up from there. Thank you very much. And then when you've got to the end, just see if you can tot up the scores, just to give you a quick summary of what it considers to be your strengths versus others. And then we'll move on and look at some of those in a little bit more detail. There are two ways in which you can respond to your survey and your personal results. And I'll put this thought in your head and let you think about which you'd like to take away. One is you can say, right, my name's Nick. Here's a series of attributes and skills that I've got to a very good level. And here are some where I'm not so good. And the traditional approach might be to go and work on those where I'm not so good and take them up to a higher level. And I think we can all relate to that approach. It's pretty sensible and a well-proven model. The group of people who are called positive psychologists take a slightly different approach and say, well, I can do that, but actually I could take the things that I'm quite good at and I could really make myself exceptional at some of those. And I could really, take it up from 7 out of 10 to a 9 or a 10 out of 10 score if I want. So I'll leave you to think about those in terms of, which would be the right approach for you. I'm very interested to know, out of interest, just by way of showing hands, if there was something you could do to increase your authenticity at work with your teams, how many of you would, spend some time working on authenticity more? Can you just put your hand up if that's something that... Quite a few of you. Okay, wonderful. How many of you feel very interested about curiosity and learning a bit more about what curiosity is about and what the values might be? Okay, a lot of people. That's interesting. Good. What about humility? How many of us would be more interested in humility? Obviously, I don't need to do that because I'm humble enough as it is. But quite a few people here. Okay, thank you very much indeed. What about persistence? Where does persistence rate? Hands up if you'd like to learn to be a little bit more or think about that. Okay, so you look as though got a persistent group here already, potentially. What about hope? If you could learn a bit more about hope. A few of you, quite a few. Okay, and the last two, bravery. Who'd be wow, look at that. A lot of hands going up there. Look at that. Wow, gosh, interesting. Okay, and the last one, vitality. I don't do vitality. No, but bravery. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely. Well, that's very, very good indeed. The questionnaire, obviously, is for yours to keep and take away. And when you get a chance, over a cup of coffee or going home tonight on the train or whatever, if you read through some of the notes on the back, it talks about some of the qualities in a bit more detail. And I'll leave you to think about, do I want to take those skills up to a high level, or do I want to focus on some, where I'm perhaps a little bit weak? So thank you very much indeed for doing that. So, in your pack as well, there is also what's called a little handout. And if you wouldn't mind taking this, Courageous Leaders, this is for you to write on and to jot some thoughts down. So I'm going to give you a chance to have a bit of fun, although there's a sort of serious side to this. And if you find the side of the paper where the word authenticity is written, this is the first of the 7 heads of Courageous Leaders we're going to look at. I'm going to ask you to spend 3 minutes with a lovely person next to you. I'm going to try and give you about 90 seconds each. If you were in those rooms, as it were, where it says here, so we have the kitchen, the family room, the living room, the study, what are 3 things that people would say about you? So I'm going to ask you to come up with 3 adjectives that would describe you. So, for instance, in the kitchen, what would your partner or closest friend say about you? They might say you're fun, you've got a great sense of humour, you're very organised, something like that. What would, in the study, what would work colleagues say about you? They might say you're very technical, they might say you're very, very focused, they might say you're a really good leader. It's just a quick 90-second exchange with your partner, about 2 or 3 adjectives that come to mind that would describe you according to these different people in the room. Does that make sense? So it's just a quick, honest debrief for 90 seconds with the person next to you. 3 words that come to mind. Okay, off you go. 90 seconds each, 3 minutes. What comes to mind about you? 3 words that these people would describe. And write them down on your handouts for me, please, all right? Could be serious, could be fun, could be courageous, it might be brave, lots of energy. "90 seconds each. Just pop some words down there. Write them on your handout, please. What would describe you? What would these people say about you? And you should probably be on the second person now, please. So begin to go over to the second person if you haven't done them in parallel. If you're doing one at a time, move on to the other lovely person, please. Got some ideas? Okay, 20 seconds. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, lovely people. Let's find out. Give me some examples. What would your partner or closest friend, were you having a coffee with them in the kitchen, what would they say about you? Give me some examples. What kind of adjectives came to mind about you? Lazy. Okay, right. Spoken like a true husband. Well done. Okay, what else? Someone putting their hand up here. Dangerous. Wow. In the kitchen or generally? I shall now make a paella. I'm going to stand over here. Okay. Right, so dangerous. That's it. Why? That's fascinating. Why dangerous? In what sense? Really? That's not good at work, is it? Or at home? No. That's not in your job description, I'm sure. Okay. So dangerous. Interesting. What else? Give me another one, please. What your partner would say about you. Dependable. Wonderful. Perfect. Excellent word. Superb. What about the family room? I know everyone's family situation is different at home, but what about the rest of your family, whether it's your children or mums and dads and brothers, sisters? What kind of words came to mind there that people would use to describe you? Generous. Very good. Bossy. Right. Okay. Yes. I can see that. No, I'm joking. Okay. Bossy, generous. What else? Pain in the arse. That technical psychology term. That's right. Yes. That's right. Well done. Bossy, generous, and a pain in the arse. Good. Very good. What about in the living room, circle of friends, so socially? Perhaps the people you met with at the weekend and socialised with, what kind of words would they use to describe you? Say again? Really? So all these technical words you're coming out with, I'm impressed. All beginning with P. Okay, you like a few drinks. Loyal, fantastic. What a wonderful thing to be said about you. Superb. One more. Helpful, lovely, great. So your friends think you're helpful. This is the authentic you, very good. What about this last one, study, work colleagues? What kind of words came to mind? Because sometimes they might be the same. Very often we come up with some different adjectives. So give me some examples. Yes, please. Thoughtless. Focused, sorry. Sure you said thoughtless. I pride myself on being thoughtless. I know, we've noticed over so many years. Focused, very good, excellent one. What else? Say again. I didn't hear, sorry. Loud, sorry. My head thought you said loathed, and I couldn't quite process that one. Thoughtless and loathed, and I'm very good at it, and consistently so. So yeah, good, very good. Loud, very good. What else? Prickly. Interesting. Okay, right, interesting, fine. So, say again. Cagey. Geeky. Okay, very good. And are you okay with that? Is that something that you think describes you? Okay, yeah, right. I'm on my laptop, and I'm fine. I'm very geeky. Yes, good. So wonderful, thank you. So first exercise. Take away some thoughts when you can about who the real you is. It's one of the things that surveys suggest people really want to know from us very, very often is who the authentic person is. And very often when we come into work, we cross a line and you put your work hat on as a manager or a leader and you perhaps go into a different role, you know what I mean? And the different person comes out. So consider what you want the authentic you to be like at work. And sometimes if you know people well enough, you can even go around and ask people. What they think of you, people you know well enough. Yeah? Any other thoughts about those adjectives? Good examples, thank you. Good start. Okay, so let's have a thought about humility now. And I don't know whether we have time to consider humility and being humble as a regular part of what we do. I'm reading a fascinating book at the moment by, I think, a Canadian psychologist, and the book is called Daring Greatly. And it was a book that was recommended in the Times or the Telegraph about a year ago, and I picked it up and I'm started to read it. It's a book in which it suggests that as leaders, we don't always have to promote an image whereby we think we know everything or we have answers to everything. It's okay sometimes to show yourself to be vulnerable or open and also to be very humble. And if there's an area where I don't know something, but I've got great people around me who do, it's okay to default to those people and call on their experience and their knowledge. It's called Daring Greatly. I just mentioned it. It's a very, very good book to read. So if you have a look in the middle of the, I'm throwing lots of pieces of paper, aren't I, an activity at you. You didn't know you were going to exams this morning. This is what we call the humility tree, okay? And I'm going to ask you to think just for a minute. You can pop your name in the first box if you want, step 1. So pop your name down there, just your first name if you like. And then step 2, just take a few moments personally. Think of an achievement that you have made recently in your life. This doesn't have to be in a work environment. Very often a work environment experience comes to mind first of all. But just think of an achievement that comes to mind as something that you're pretty proud of. It's an important thing in your life. Might be a project, might be building a team together, might be transitioning through some change. It may well be something outside work, could be related to family. And then the next step, just for the next sort of 2 minutes at the moment, after that, is to think about these next 3 questions. Who helped me? If I'm being humble and I'm really stepping back from it, who actually helped me to get here? Who were the other stakeholders? Who were the other people that were a very key part of that happening? So pop your name there, think of the achievement, and then go into the third box, who helped me? And then if you can, this way it gets really difficult sometimes, you may not be able to answer them. Number 4, who helped them? And then who in turn helped them? So just take a few moments. Think of an achievement, could well be work, outside work, and then pop your humility hat on. Did I do that on my own, or were there actually people who helped me? And whether people who helped them, and this could be suppliers, outside organisations, third parties, colleagues, other departments, mentors, coaches. We were running this session with HBOS recently, I'm sure they won't mind me telling you, and one of the senior executives had quite a sort of cathartic moment, I think, at the end of the session. And he said, we just got through some very big projects and some reorganisations. And one of the things that hit me was that we don't know, or we don't acknowledge, the contribution that the partners of our employees and senior managers made to these changes being achieved. People had worked very long hours, they'd run the extra mile. So one of the things he went away and did, apparently within about 48 hours of going through this activity, he drafted a letter to send to all the wives and husbands of his senior managers to say, we don't acknowledge enough the amount of time that you spend in supporting your husband or wife in these projects. And he wrote a letter to them basically saying, thank you very much for all the support and help that they've got in the past, particularly over some particular key projects. So that was one action that he took away from that activity. Yeah. Is this an easy thing to do? Could you think of the activity first of all, the project? Did it come to mind? Yeah. Was it easy then to think of who else had helped you? Were there people that came to mind? What about the next stage? Who helped them? A few people nodding, yeah. Did anyone get to the next stage of who helped the people who helped them? The top bit, was that easy to do? Did anyone fill some of those boxes in? It becomes a little harder, doesn't it? So, take away the activity of humility and thinking about that skill, and thinking about whether or not I could show some more humility at times. Would it be appropriate for work? Would it be a good thing for me to have in my armour, if you like? And are there other people whose contributions can sometimes perhaps be acknowledged, either personally one-to-one, or perhaps in an open environment when you're having a sort of monthly meeting? Yeah. Any other thoughts on humility? Any particular projects somebody wants to share with us in the time we have here that they were proud of? I'm keeping an eye on the time because I must finish on time for Steve. Okay. Yes, please.
Yeah, I re-engineered employee compliance within specialist employee compliance.
Okay.
And our team at the time were the results were absolutely dreadful, and there was a lot of behavioural issues.
Okay.
By bringing that project into our outturn, a dangerous team to actually bring a full-scale change programme into, we actually managed to turn it around. We managed to turn around behaviours, and we ended up turning that team into a centre of excellence, uplifting our performance by 167% in terms
Fantastic.
of and productivity.
Congratulations. And over what period of time was that?
That was over a 2-year period.
Good. Good for you. Wonderful. Wonderful story. And were you aware as you were going through it who all the contributors were? Yeah, you were. Good. Okay, you sound as though you're proud of that. Good example. Well done. Fabulous. So, thank you very much indeed. You take away your personal stories and thoughts there, and just check back in around humility and whether or not there were times when we can put a little bit of humility in. Yeah. So, authenticity, humility. Is this making sense so far? Are you enjoying it? Thank goodness for that. 2 people are. So, the third one I'm going to take you through is what's called vitality. I studied Latin at school. If I remember vita, vitae, third conjugation, feminine noun, meaning life. So if something's vital, it relates to your life. And vitality is the skill and the energy you have, rather, that literally enables you to live life more to the full. I'm going to show you someone now, and I apologise in advance if you've seen this video before. It often gets shown around in events like this. But I think it's very, very interesting. Am I suggesting you should show the level of vitality this gentleman has, including the sweat patches underneath his arms? No, not necessarily. But I'll just play it, then I'll get your views on it, if I may, and see what you think of this example. All right? And I'll make a couple of comments on it. So this is Steve Ballmer, who is the chief executive of Microsoft, took over from Bill Gates.
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Ballmer! I have 4 words for you. I love this company. Yes!
So from tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, this is how we want you to behave. Thoughts about that? Quick brainstorm, quick adjectives come to mind, yes? Aggressive, yes, absolutely. Crackers. Sorry? Okay, I've not had the pleasure of meeting, so I don't know, but I'm sure you're probably right. Right, in American, that's right, so you can get away with it and so on. Lots of cultural aspects to that, yes, absolutely. Quite false, yes, okay, absolutely right. And I think you're right to make these observations. So here's what I'm going to give you as a sort of takeaway from this. If you want to behave this way and you think it's appropriate, okay, that is totally up to you. You're the expert on your environment. But I want to put a thought into your head from one psychologist. So you know in a room, you sometimes have a heating control or a dial, like you do for a volume on a system like the one we're using here today. Think of a dial going from, say, 0 to 10, and you having the ability to turn your vitality up or down according to the situation you're in, yeah? So think about when you're in the office normally, perhaps in a meeting or going about your day-to-day job, as it were, whatever those activities might be. On a scale of 0 to 10, just give me a quick shout out. Where do you think your vitality dial is set normally? On a sort of wet Monday morning like we were talking about earlier on. 4? Yeah, good answer, yeah, 4. Might be 3, might be 5. And that's probably entirely appropriate. So the thought I want to put into your head today from the psychologists is, would there be some situations in which it would be appropriate for me to turn it up just a wee bit to say 5 or 6? You might have a new project or a merger or a reorganization going on, or some kind of activity where you really want to put a bit of energy into it, not necessarily as much as Steve Ballmer was doing, but you want to take it up to 7 or 8 out of 10, yeah? Would there be a situation where you want to inspire people and really get people focused and throw things up in the air so they land a bit differently? And actually, I'm going to put it at 9 because I've decided that's really good. 10 minutes later, I've gone back to 4 again. So I don't know all the environments you're working in, but please think about this idea of the dial, your energy and vitality dial, and think about situations when it might be appropriate to turn it up. An obvious example when you'd have it set incredibly low is, heaven forbid, you go to a funeral. But if you're at a wedding or a big family event, it might be at 5 or 6, and you might say in the working environment, I would love it to be 8 or 9 every now and then, because I think that's an appropriate thing, yeah? Any thoughts on vitality? Anyone here particularly proud of their vitality? Everyone have a reputation for being lots of energy at work and being a person who's got lots of vitality? No. Absolutely, spot on, yeah. And vitality and energy is very contagious as well, and it spreads very infectious in the nicest possible way, and people like that, that's right. And if it becomes acceptable, absolutely right, yeah, good. So does anyone pride themselves on vitality in the room? Did I see hands go up? Good. 3 people. This is the vital corner here. 4 people here. Fantastic. Wonderful. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Good. So, moving on for reasons of time. Bravery. Put your hand up, please, if you consider yourself to be brave in the world of work. Who takes brave decisions? This is obviously the brave corner at the back here. Okay, quite a few of you here. I'm reading a wonderful book at the moment. I don't know if anybody here read it. It's called Crucial Conversations. If you like to read about psychology and so on, it's written by 4 authors, I think it is. They pooled 20 years of their experience together, and they talk about how in human life, in work and in personal life, you and I as humans have to have anywhere between 1 and 20 courageous conversations during our life. And the book is actually called Crucial Conversations. If you haven't read it, I just recommend it. I can't tell you how powerful it is and the impact it had on me when I read it. So if you're interested in bravery, there's a book around that subject. Very, very, very interesting. There's an interesting story from a school, I think it was a primary school in Northern Ireland, where in the school they had set a regular activity called the Story Circle. And something like every Monday morning, they would get the children together in the school with a member of staff, and they would put them in a group, and the teacher would step back from the situation, and the group was allowed to talk about anything at all that they wanted to. And the idea was the children would raise whatever topic it was, and they could talk about things in whatever way they wanted to. And one of the boys in the class was very nervous, didn't have many friends. He was called Billy. And the teacher announced that Billy wants to say something to the group. So this was a Monday morning, and a young lad was there with all his classmates. And Billy, who presumably was about 6 or 7 years old, took his time, sort of holding back the tears, and he said, I don't have many friends. And there was a quiet tumbleweed moment where nobody knew what to say. And the silence went on for some time. The teacher was very tempted to jump in and take over and say, well, we will now do this, and let's talk about this and direct you. But the member of staff had the bravery to be quiet and say nothing. And then eventually, one by one, 3 children had the bravery to say to the group, Billy, I'll be your friend for a week. I don't know what happened on week 2, but week 1 was good. And another child then said, I'll be your friend as well for a month. All right, so month 2, who knows? And another child said, I'll be your friend. I'd be very happy to. So there's bravery there on behalf of the member of staff for letting it happen, and also for the other children. So the psychologists said that we have a lot of bravery in us. It's inherent in us, like it was in those 3 children. And those stories came to the front. Anybody got a quick story, for reasons of time, about where they've been brave at work, where they've shown courage and been very brave in the working environment? Not really. Just to confirm that, no, not really, Nick. No, no. Sir, yes.
Not recently, but I went into the office of the chief executive of the organisation I was working for to tell her that the way that the finance department was being reorganised was wrong and against government internal auditing standards. I was the only person that actually went into her office to do that.
And you have to tell us part B. How did it go? Did they? So good for you. So they listened well? They listened well? That's very good. They listened, yeah? Good. Good for you. Excellent. And that is a brave conversation, particularly if you think it might have come back on you in some way. You're absolutely right. So Bravery, Crucial Conversations, wonderful book to go and get. Thoroughly encourage you to take some time to read that if I may as well. Let's just move on for that. I've got a little video clip here. If I'll just move on for reasons of time. Who considers themselves to show hope? Who's very good at showing hope on a day-to-day, but who's very optimistic and buoyant? And don't be, afraid to say it. Quite a few of you are. All the research on people who are hopeful and optimistic and buoyant and upbeat about things suggests so many amazing things. We get a lot more satisfaction from our work. We enjoy things a lot more. We tend to attract people to us as well, because we tend to have a reputation for being very inspiring and looking to the future and thinking the glass is, half full. There's lots of good things in there. Barack Obama is one of his speechwriters regularly mentions the phrase that I think our best days lie ahead. You might have heard that phrase used on a regular basis. So lots of different reasons why people like to use hope and instill it in their teams as well. Just a quick 60 seconds with the person next to you. We would have done this in a cabaret style, but the layout is a bit different. So you're back to the lovely person next to you. Can you think about something in your work life that you are very hopeful about? Something going on in your work life you're very hopeful about. 60 seconds to share it with your partner. What might that be? Just a quick thought. Something you're hopeful about in work. Could be a project, an initiative, a move. Ten seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, quick example. Let's have one example for reasons of time. Can somebody share something in their working environment that they're very hopeful about? They're looking forward to, they believe it will go well, they're very optimistic. Anybody have an example, please? It might be a project, an initiative. Yes, please.
My IT project's delivering in October, so I'm really hopeful that it's going to go well and staff receive it well.
Wonderful. Okay, how many people are involved in that project?
It's quite a small project team. There's only about 5 of us.
Okay, very good.
It's going to be about 1,000 people affected by it.
Good for you. And it goes live in October? Okay, and do the team have hope as well? Is it just you, or do the team have hope as well?
No. It's been quite a challenge, so we're stuck with it, and we've had a lot of hurdles to get over. So
Okay.
really hopeful.
Good for you. Fantastic. Well, I hope it goes well, and that's very exciting to hear. So hope, optimism. The psychologists say that when someone talks to you about how was your weekend, what are you doing this weekend, what was your holiday like, we have a choice about what we say. We have a choice about whether we talk about things positively and enthusiastic. Most human beings on Monday morning, when someone asks them about their weekend, say, yeah, Not too bad. Yours? But we have an opportunity there. So actually, I had a fantastic weekend. Or I went to a great restaurant, or I saw a really good film, or we did this, or I met this person. We have an opportunity to turn up the optimism and the energy. We can actually choose different words, as opposed to saying, not too bad, bit cold, shame about the rain, wasn't it? We can actually come out with different vocabulary if we want to. And again, that hope is considered to be very, very infectious, very contagious to people around us. Does that make sense? Persistence. Remind me again. Put your hand up if you think you're persistent. Steve's going to talk about projects a little in a few minutes where persistence. So most of you are persistent in this room, which is very good indeed. Okay. On your handouts, if I could, you're almost at the end. I'm not going to take you through too many activities now. On your handout, on the left-hand side of the page, is a little model that was put together by a psychologist, I think an American psychologist called Seth Godin. And in order to work out whether or not something was good to persist with or whether you should quit, he came up with these 3 questions here. Am I panicking? If so, continue. Never decide to quit based on emotion, but always do so on fact. Am I making progress? Well, if I am, that's a pretty good sign. Continue. And then thirdly, who am I trying to influence? If it's only one person or a smaller number, you should expect a quick result. If it's an entire market or business, obviously you're going to expect results to be a little bit slower, yeah? I don't know whether anybody here is able to put their hand up and admit to playing cards and being a regular card player, but it's analogous to people in the game of cards. You know when to quit if the cards you've got in your hand are very bad. And if you can't win, and you think people around you are likely to beat you, a very seasoned, experienced card player will do what's called quitting. They'll fold and wait for the next round or the next hand. And it's a similar kind of thing in persistence. And Steve, I know, is going to refer to some projects and activities in a few minutes where persistence is considered to be a very, very vital skill. Okay, I'll take you through this for reasons of time. The final one, which I think we'll have a bit of fun on, curiosity. I'm very, very passionate about this. I believe in the world of work and in relationships as well. We either don't get or we don't find enough time to ask questions and be curious about people and things going on around us. Hence the story about Albert Einstein at the beginning. And it's quite interesting how, if you use what are called open question techniques, so words that begin with who, how, what, where, and why, that tends to tease information from people. You may have heard of a technique called the 5 whys. Anyone heard of that? I'm sure you know about that, where within 5 questions of asking the word why, you can get down to the root cause of something. If you've got the answer after 2, you can stop there. You don't have to keep saying why. But I'm late for work. Why are you late for work? Because I ran out of petrol. Why did you run out of petrol? I had no petrol left in the car because I had no money. Why did you have no money? Because I lost it all on gambling last night. Why did you lose it all on gambling? Because I'm not very good at bluffing in front of more experienced people. So just with asking the question why 5 times, I've gone from knowing that Nick was late to work to knowing that he's got some other issue in his life and he's got no money. So it's a very, very useful technique, and it throws up lots of information, teases things out of people. So if you have a look at this blank bit of here, I'm going to ask you to do a daft thing now, but it's a bit of fun. On your handout, it says curiosity. I want you to imagine that is a courtyard. I guess we're looking down on it from 5,000 feet, yeah? It's a courtyard, and there's a piece of treasure based in that courtyard. Okay, you with me? So we're looking down onto this courtyard. This is a very personal thing. I just want you to put an X according to where in that courtyard you reckon the treasure's buried, all right? So this is a gut reaction from you. Is the treasure buried in the middle? Is it to the top left-hand corner, the right-hand corner? And then in a minute, I'm going to show you a pattern which shows you where most human beings guess where it is. Are you having fun there, girls? No. Have you built a courtyard at home this weekend with treasure in? Is that what you... No? Have you? Okay, that's because you're bossy. You said you were bossy earlier on. It's coming through. Okay. So, most human beings, in most situations, behave habitually. We tend to do things in the way that we've always done, yeah? Apparently, according to the psychologist, it takes you and I up to 64 days to change the route by which we come to work. Even if the new route is overtly beneficial in terms of time, we tend to be a habitual creature. And this guy standing here is a particularly habitual creature. I would probably take 75 days to change the route, okay? And apparently, when it comes to this activity, a lot of people tend to think in the same way about where they would put the cross. So out of interest, can you just put your hand up if the cross or the dot that you put in your pattern, in your courtyard, fell on one of those dots there? Okay, probably the majority of people. Can you put your hand up if it didn't, if you feel that your dot or cross was significantly outside those? Interesting, probably about 10% of the room, okay. So take away from that little activity and the topic of curiosity. Are there times when it would be good for me, and maybe my team as well, to develop curiosity? You're not trying to be nosy, you're not trying to poke your nose into things where they shouldn't be poked into, as it were, but you're asking questions, open questions, the 5 whys, just to find out more information. Most people, according to psychologists, when they're faced with a question, can you help? Or have you got 10 minutes when I could talk about this? Or I'd like to find out about your project that you've done here up in Newcastle. Can I have 10 minutes with you to talk about it? Most people, according to psychologists, tend to say, yeah, sure. I'd be very happy to help you. I can't do it now because I'm busy, but come back next Tuesday morning. And most people are very happy to kind of meet your need for curiosity. Does that kind of make sense, yeah? Any thoughts about curiosity? Any thoughts about any projects, any areas where you can see being curious would be a very good thing to do? Most people will respond to you when you ask for help and you say, I need your help. So the final thing I'm going to do, just so I can finish on time, I want you to turn to the lovely person next to you again, and I want you to come up with 2 questions each that you want to know about what is going on in this picture. So this was me over the weekend. No, I'm only kidding. I have a Dyson. I want you to tell me 2 questions, or tell your partner 2 questions which come to mind about this scene, the room, the person, the time of day. Go. 30 seconds, just to share with your partner. 2 questions that come to mind. Be really curious. Which country you like it? Keep it clean. I know you will. She is. 2 questions each, okay? Okay. Right-hand side of the room. Give me a question you came up with. Which country is she from? I heard several people say, which country is she from? Good. Middle of the room. What year? Very good. So when was it? Which year? Over here? Very good. Well, I like that. And good luck with the therapy sessions. That's good. That's good. That's very clever. Very good indeed. Good. In 39 years of running this, I've never heard that observation. Very sharp, so I'm impressed. Very good indeed, yeah. Now, if we had more time, and we haven't, and I haven't, and I'm in danger of overrunning, the psychologists say that if you get down into your subconscious mind, you know that something like 10% of our mind is the conscious stuff that you're aware of, and about 90% of our mind is the subconscious stuff. If you give your mind time to get down past that initial layer, you get down into the subconscious stuff, and that's where you have brilliant ideas and stuff. And if we had time here today, and for some daft reason I was to give you an hour to come up with some questions to be really curious about that, although that one's a pretty wonderful question there, apparently, according to the psychologists, we would come up with incredible gold nuggets of thoughts and questions and ideas that we didn't know we have in our head. So in your working environments, you have the opportunity to say, A, can I be more curious? And B, how far can my curiosity go? Do I want to ask the obvious questions that, frankly, I can program a robot to ask? Or do I actually want to get down into something that's a bit more interesting in terms of really understanding how an organization works, or how they work with partners, or how they use resources best? So consider, A, could you be more curious? And B, to what extent could you push that curiosity, like a great guy called Albert Einstein did, to really get down to the depths of where those gold nuggets are to be found? You all have amazing questions to ask about this picture, if I gave you the luxury of the time. But unfortunately, for reasons of time, we don't here today. Yeah. So, I am coming towards the end of my time here with you this morning. I hope you found the session useful. I hope it's given you some ideas of things to think about. It was designed, as Ruth was saying earlier on, to be a taster for the September and October sessions that are taking place for grade 5, grade 6 and SCS, some of which will be half day, some of which will be full day sessions. I'm going to encourage you and your colleagues to come along to the sessions when they're set up as much as possible. Very often people don't come to sessions because they're busy. But it's because you're busy that you need to come along to the sessions. You know that. I'm telling you things you already know. But remember what I said earlier on, please. The psychologists have said it's very important to get time to step back from what we're doing, to have a look at it, because probably there are some things that we need to kind of change and tweak, yeah? So the last 2 things I'm going to ask you to do, if I may, if I can just crave your indulgence for 20 seconds before you go. One thing I'm going to ask you to fill in is, just for 30 seconds or 20 seconds or so, there's a little feedback form in your card, which says rather cheekily, how was it for you? And if you wouldn't mind just jotting some quick thoughts down there about the session. If you've enjoyed it, my name's Nick. If you haven't, then it's Mary. Okay. So just some quick thoughts about the session in terms of a taster. Did you find it relevant, enjoyable? Did it inspire you to think different? Am I sending you out after the session with Steve and I here today, thinking about some things a little bit differently? And any thoughts about why you liked it? It might be that a particular quality, authenticity, bravery, humility came to mind. You thought, wow, actually, that's really important to me. I need to think about that. That's a very hot topic for me going forward. Yeah. And the final thing I want to do, which I won't do now for reasons of time, because I'm about to hand over to Steve, is to invite you, when you get a chance in your spare time, preferably before the week's out, on the back of the handout is a little section that says My Actions. And if you've got any thoughts and ideas or points that have come to your mind from this morning's sessions, please, 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 I'm literally going down there, I'm bending down on one knee, right? Please write them down on here. Because everyone knows from research and your own experiences that when you write something down, it tends to stick in your head a lot more and you're more likely to achieve it rather than carrying it around in your heart or your head as something you know you're going to do. The fact you've written it down. So it might be that with my team between now and Christmas, we're going to talk about authenticity because I don't think we really know each other very much. And actually we're going to talk about persistence because I think we need to be a little bit more persistent. So whatever those actions might be for you going forward, please just jot them down. And the fact you've jotted them down will increase your chances of achieving them. Even more than that, as you probably know, is if you share them with someone else, your chances of achieving them go up still further. Yeah. So at the end of this session, if you could either put on your chairs or leave somewhere visible, or perhaps pass down to the end of the row might be a good idea. The little temperature card I gave you at the beginning to fill in, I need to collect those from you before you go out, and then I'll take the little feedback form from you as well. Yeah. You've been delightful to work with. Thank you very much indeed. We were going to have a cabaret layout, but things changed a little bit. So I hope you didn't get too fed up with the lovely, good-looking person next to you. Oh, I've got to turn to him again or her again. So thank you very much. Any questions, any thoughts, any quick comments, observations? Any qualities you want to mention, stories? Good. I'm glad it's connected with you so well. Marvellous. Thank you very much indeed. You've been delightful to work with. I hope to see you all going in various locations. We're going to London tomorrow and then to Bristol on Wednesday, so on the road show. So wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Delightful to work with you. And I'm going to hand over to Steve now. Gabby's out of that. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Steve Elise, and I'm just going to give you about 20 minutes on the Northern pragmatism, perhaps on the how. You've heard the what in terms of the skills that perhaps are going to be relevant to the future. I'd like to talk to you about the how, and the three particular I'd like to talk to you about are persistence, bravery, and curiosity. And I'm going to talk about those in the context of technology. And but probably the first point I'd like to make is I see these skills every day, but not at work necessarily, but I see them in my daughter, my 10-year-old daughter, because she is persistent and has to be brave because this world to her is very new. And a couple of days ago, she taps him on the shoulder and she said, "Daddy, just seen a competition on TV, and the answer's B. And if you now go to the website and if you put this detail in, I'm going to win all these toys." So I'm thinking, well, how on earth she's now going to pass to me the website link? So she smiles at me and she hands me her digital camera. And what she'd done, she'd stopped the Sky TV on pause, and she'd taken a picture with the digital camera of the TV screen, and she handed to me the website, the details of the website. And the point about that really is that the next generation look at technology in a very different way, but we're the poor folk who have to deal with it today. And so what I'd like to do is really give you some colour onto the canvas of how this sort of technology, or how technology can be used, and how those skills of persistence, bravery, and curiosity are relevant to this journey. So here's a quote from one of the people I've sort of regard highly, but actually, so let me read that quote first. So this is a man who never had really seen any significant challenge in his life, very experienced. His CV was probably very impressive. That was his name. Some of you may have come across him. That's his picture. And that was his day job. So I suppose there's a word of warning here, isn't there, is that change can be quite destructive. And this is a man who was under pressure to achieve moving across a piece of water at a pace faster than ever been done before. i.e. there was, the times that he lived in were significant periods of change. And let me just share with you from when he lived three adverts. So this is one he would have probably seen himself 10, 15 years before he was the captain of that ship. And I think the words are very interesting. Maybe they resonate today in terms of the sort of the demands, in the sense that this is a machine that never strikes, never demands more pay, and never tires. And that was the thought of how technology was around the 1900s. Interestingly enough, within a few years, within 10 years, we had the telephone arrived, and again, this individual would have seen this advert, and the pictures on the left describe how you use a telephone in relation to a speakerphone, which apparently was the technology you would have used previously. So you can imagine the pace of change around this individual. But shortly after that disaster of that individual, you started to see this, and this is implying that electrification had occurred and that suddenly power was available. Now, if you substitute the word power for computing and the accessibility of broadband and perhaps knowledge and information, then I would suggest this is where we are today. Okay, this is the point we are in terms of the skills that you're going to need to apply. And what I want to show you now is some examples of how other government officials, both in the US and the UK, are being brave and persistent and curious about this world that we're now living in. So, the first one is actually from across the Atlantic, and it's from the Obama administration, 2008. They decided to bring the Recovery Act, but when they brought in the Recovery Act, which was about spending money to get them out of the recession, they launched the legislation and the technology on the same day. So effectively, from the point the legislation was available, you were able to go in and mine the information to do with the recovery, i.e. where the cash was being spent. Now, having met this team, I think they were brave because they put themselves with a hard stop of putting it out in a similar time frame to the legislation. Probably persistence, I would argue, was the one that they are having to deal with most, because the quality of the data that they're having to put out is challenging, and they're having to take stuff which was legacy and which is not easy to bring up to date. So they're definitely a team that had both vision and the persistence to drive it through. And it is a site that is part of a bigger change program in the US. And what they've done is they've set up a virtual government department. They've set up in a very short timeline. And they've also been seen as being very successful in that task. So therefore, this is where bravery does pay off. Now, the interesting thing is how did they go about it? And again, today's not about technology itself, but have a look at the labels on the left-hand side of this diagram, and you'll see from the bottom it's about infrastructure, it's about data, it's about how do I visualize that information, it's about how do I portray it through the web, it's about how do I use social media. Okay, now you may look at that and you think, how on earth would you get all those companies to work together to deliver that outcome in such a short space of time? But really my point about it is this. The circles are integrations that have been taking place between very well-established firms that work, that those companies have spent time and money on. And the key to their success was not the technology, it was the relationships they developed with the people that they work with. Now, I'm a general manager of a business, and I work with both other suppliers and with government every day. I work across central, local, devolved, national security, defence. And the one thing that I see consistently where innovation is strong and successful is where the team have a view of where they want to get to, but they also have the sense to work in a partnering way, and they've developed the capability they need to do their job. So I would suggest when you go back to the workplace, if you're not willing to develop the sort of relationships that led to this success, then you will end up getting the suppliers and the partners you deserve. You'll end up with risk-adverse people. You'll end up working with people who live off contracts. It's all about the way that people are engaged, I would suggest, as part of your day-to-day. Okay, so let me just sort of give you a sense of this in relation to today in the UK. And the first example comes from Civil Service Live last year, the London event. And what we tried to do last year was help DCLG surface some information. So in this case, it was about the riots. And what this diagram shows is where the people came from who were convicted in the riots, and you can see the red dots representing that. And you'll see some inference that's been drawn in regard to areas of deprivation. Okay. The challenge with this sort of thing is it took a long time to do. Each of the databases had to be brought together, they had to be anonymized. It took weeks, and I would suggest that whilst the outcome was very good, the way that they got to it was too long and not really relevant to a time when there's less money around. So let me just give you an alternative, and this one comes from the city of Sheffield. So this is the CIOs of Sheffield, so it's local government, CIOs wanting to understand the context of their world, the South Yorkshire CIO community, which includes the police and the health. Now, what they have done is they've mapped anonymously where the troubled families are. So they've taken the core data on secure cloud, so they've taken a risk, and this is about Bravery. But what they've done now is they've created the capability to have a look at their city and to see where the families are, the dark being where they are. What it is allowing them to do through curiosity now is to start to look at the factors relating to their city. And you can see the different factors in the sort of top 3 diagrams. On the bottom right, segmentation being used. Counterintuitive, actually. Red is areas where there's low preponderance of those activities. Blue is where there's a high reality of lower wages and more likely to be a troubled family. But the point is they wanted to know about their place of work, where they operate from. And what they've been able to do is now work to identify the type of, top left, the type of factor that might be relevant, and also to start heat mapping the relationship to schools, because the community policemen need to know where these activities may be. But the point I'm making about it is that the team has been persistent because they've forced through the anonymization of data, changing culture, and they've been brave and to make this visible to that community. And I would suggest that has got them to, in 12 weeks, to quite a significant position. Although, interestingly enough, 8 of those weeks were actually involved in getting the data anonymized and the protocols being signed off. So the point is, you can do this stuff if you are brave. Going on to something else, I think the Olympics for me was a great experience. A lot of urgent operational requirements came through. And one of the big issues for Transport for London was very much about how do I do things quickly, because this is a one-off event and I have little time. And the challenge they had, and they had to be brave and they had to be persistent, was they had to monitor all these routes that you see on this map. And the routes were East London, not surprisingly, to do with where the village was, but also all the way down to the southwest coast. And what they had to do was they had to basically give certainty to movement without any infrastructure. And they used that using anonymized phone data and also anonymized data from devices like TomTom devices. But once they achieved that, they didn't stop. They delivered it for the Games. And what they've done subsequently is drive that through as a collaborative program with partners to say, well, if we could do it for that, why can't we do it for the longer term? And these are pictures of the City of London now that are being used using anonymized phone data, and are showing journey times without infrastructure, okay? And the other point about it is it's at scale. This is large data being used by this team to deliver this outcome. So you can do these big data projects on relatively small budgets and actually achieve them. But again, the curiosity and the persistence has been not only to say that, but also to say, well, actually, what else could we do with it? So this is now heat maps of the population of London, 8 million people, something like 1 billion journeys have already been tracked. And it's about not stopping when you think you've come up with a good solution, but just keep pushing it. And this is groundbreaking work by a very small team working with a whole bunch of partners. So again, I'm just reiterating this point on Bravery. Okay, so I'm just going to look at the city of Bradford. So it's another example from local government, I appreciate, but it's about the willingness to start looking at things much more holistically. And I think curiosity is probably what drives this. So here's Bradford. It's a city, and in dark brown you can see at the centre the high growth areas. It's where the flats are being built, where the new offices are being built. And they very much wanted to understand their city, and they wanted to know what that city, what the implications are for the community. So they're willing to, they've basically got other data sources from other parts of their organisation, the hospitals, the health organisation. So they've mapped the hospitals. And They've also mapped on the schools. So in this case, schools that are full, schools that are likely to be full, etc. And what they're developing is a real situational awareness of their city and what they're going to have to do to make this work. Now, it looks like, my opinion, the centre of the town is going to be reasonably well served with schools, but there are some areas in the south of the growth area, it looks like the schools are going to be too full. So if you're a parent arriving into buying one of those new flats, you're not really going to find anywhere to send your children to school. And I think these are the sorts of issues that I would suggest that a small city has got to look at going forward. Okay. Just again, taking another city in the north, Nottingham, young city energy manager, given a brief to help on creating the low-carbon city, one of the best in Europe. And this is very much about him and his team having the bravery to put a service onto the deck, which is actually more meaningful. And what you're seeing here is they can now pull any part of the city, they can literally just grab it, they can pull it out, and it creates the return on investment on the fly, and you can then effectively work out where you're going to put your investment in the city in terms of the types of energy that are going to be usage that can be available. But this is very useful internally, I would suggest, for the local authority. But where they really, I would say, have gone the extra mile is in terms of the way that they're dealing with the public. Because the public aren't interested in maps, they aren't interested in any of that. What they want is a report on their house. So now in the city of Nottingham, you can stick your postcode in and you can get a report on how much it would cost and the return on investment for you to stick your solar panels on your house. And this is the sort of service that we see that really makes a difference on a day-to-day basis, and I would argue is the inspiration for their journey to get to become that low-carbon city of the future. So I suppose the point I'm trying to make to you is that these skills that you've got a sense of today are relevant, but it's going to be how do you apply them to your world on a day-to-day basis, because it's the how that really matters. And from a point of view of a general manager in a small company that works with the big companies as well, we're having to anticipate what the world might look like and put together the types of services that might be relevant to the future, because ultimately we can't offer them to folks like yourself unless we know what we want to do. So we're having to invest in the cloud, we're having to be brave and sticking stuff on secure servers, we're having to do all the things that I think you're going to have to do over the next few years. And so I hope that gives you a sense of how you might apply yourself to some of these challenges going forward. And I suppose just going back to my story at the beginning with my daughter, so of course we went on the website, it was answer B, she was correct. She did end up getting a phone call within 24 hours from Disney, and of course she did get that big box of toys that she just thought she deserved. My colleagues at work said, great, how about the lottery next? You know, if she's that good, could we move on to the next level? But unfortunately, she's also learnt in the last couple of years that first win was a one-off to some degree. But I'm still hoping the lottery will come up at some point. So I hope that gives you a sense of the perspective from a small commercial company and how the world may be changing, and perhaps some indicators for you to come on this program in the future and learn some more of this insight that we hope we can give you. Okay, well that's me, and I'm just going to look at my colleagues here and say we're going to close down at this point, are we?
I'll go to. Thanks very much indeed, Steve. I'd just like to say thanks very much to Steve and Nick as well. Two really interesting sessions. I think what's particularly interesting is to see how the two work together, looking at developing yourself, being courageous leaders, and then practical application. Really good examples of how it's worked. I know Esri have got a stand downstairs as well. We'd like you to fill in your evaluation forms. That would be really useful for us. We were going to try and do some electronic voting, but I think it's turned out to be a little bit difficult for me to operate, so we're going to leave that bit if that's okay with you. What we'd like you to do is to fill in those forms now that Nick gave to you, and also to keep a lookout in the next few weeks where we'll be looking at running this programme out as one-day events and also some half-day events starting from September and October. So if you could leave your forms behind, and thank you very much for your attention today.